The human soldier woke up to find his unexpected reward. A beautiful alien slave, the human soldier woke slowly, as if pulled from deep water. Light pressed gently against his closed eyes, not harsh or blinding, but warm and steady. He lay still for a moment, listening. There was no alarm, no distant thunder of engines, no shouted commands. Only a soft hum, like the breathing of a great, calm machine. His name was Elias Mercer. He had been a soldier for most of his adult life, trained to wake fast and ready, but this place did not feel dangerous. When he opened his eyes, the ceiling above him curved like the inside of a shell, glowing with faint lines of pale blue light. He was not in a military bunk. He was not even on a human ship. Elias sat up carefully. His body felt heavy but unharmed. His uniform was gone, replaced by simple gray clothing that fit well but carried no rank or markings. His boots were neatly placed beside the bed. Someone had taken care with him. He swung his legs over the side and stood. The floor was smooth and warm under his feet. A wide opening in the wall showed a room beyond, open and quiet. Before he could take a step, a soft voice spoke from behind him. "You are awake." Elias turned. An alien stood near the far wall. She was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly like polished stone touched by moonlight. Her eyes were large and dark, thoughtful rather than afraid. She wore layered robes in deep green and silver, woven with patterns Elias did not recognize. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human ideas of beauty. It was the calm in her posture, the steady intelligence in her gaze. Instinct made Elias tense. He did not raise his hands, but his shoulders tightened, ready for anything. "Where am I?" he asked. "You are aboard the conquered station," she said. "A neutral place beyond the borders of your people and mine." He searched his memory. The last thing he remembered was the end of the campaign on Caro's Rim, months of patrols, negotiations, and silent standoffs. Then a sudden collapse from exhaustion, or maybe something stronger. He had volunteered for too many shifts. His body had finally failed. "Why am I here?" he asked. The alien stepped forward, stopping at a respectful distance. "You were brought here as an honored guest, and I was assigned to you." "Assigned?" Elias repeated. "Yes," she said calmly, "as your reward." The word struck him harder than any weapon. "Reward?" Elias stared at her, certain he had misunderstood. "I don't understand." "In our records," she continued, "you are listed as a key human defender who prevented the collapse of the Caro's negotiations. Your actions saved multiple species from open war. Among my people, such service is acknowledged with a personal offering." Elias felt cold spread through his chest. "You mean me?" "Yes, and you." His voice lowered. "What does that mean for you?" She did not flinch. "I am designated as a companion delegate." "In your language, the translation is imperfect. The closest word chosen by the coalition translators was slave." Elias took a step back as if the floor had shifted under him. "No," he said quickly. "That's wrong. That word is wrong." She watched him closely. "You are distressed." "I should be," he said. "If what you're saying is true." The alien folded her hands together. "Among my people, this role is not punishment, it is chosen. We offer ourselves to learn from those we believe shape the future." I volunteered. "That doesn't make it better," Elias said. "No one gets to be a reward, no one." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the station seemed louder now. "My name is Celari," she said at last, "and I was curious about humans." Elias rubbed his face with both hands. He had seen many strange things since humanity reached the stars, but this felt different. This was not a battlefield misunderstanding. This was something deeper, cultural, moral. "What exactly do they think I earned?" he asked. "Access to my time, my presence, my knowledge," Celari said. "I was to observe you, serve as an interpreter of interspecies custom, and adapt myself to your preferences so that our people might better understand yours." Elias looked at her sharply. "Adapt how?" She tilted her head slightly. "Emotionally, socially, intellectually." Nothing in her tone suggested fear or shame, and somehow that made it worse. "You shouldn't be here like this," Elias said. "Not for me." "You refuse the reward?" she asked. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Completely?" Celari blinked, slow and deliberate. "This has not happened before." "Then it's about time," Elias replied. A soft chime sounded and light shifted along the walls. The station seemed to be listening. "There will be consequences," Celari said. "The coalition may see this as an insult." "Then they don't understand humans," Elias said, "and that's the real problem." He took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. Anger would not help. He had spent years learning that peace was not made by shouting, but by standing firm without violence. "Listen," he said more gently. "I didn't fight and negotiate for years just to accept something like this. If my people made mistakes, we fix them. We don't benefit from them." Salieri studied him with open interest now. "You speak as though moral consistency matters even when it costs you." "It does," Elia said. "That's kind of the point." She was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice carried something new, uncertainty. "Among my people," she said, "power is proven by what one is given." "Among mine," Elias replied, "power is proven by what one refuses to take." The words seemed to echo through the room. Somewhere beyond the walls, unseen observers were likely recording every moment. Salieri straightened. "If you formally reject the role, my assignment will be reviewed. I may be reassigned or returned home." "Good," Elias said. "That's what should happen." "And if the coalition asks you to reconsider?" she asked. "Then I'll say the same thing again," he answered. "Slower if I have to." For the first time, Salieri smiled. It was subtle, brief, but real. "I believed humans were dangerous because of their strength," she said. "Now I wonder if the danger is something else." Elias met her gaze. "We're dangerous to bad ideas," he said, "even when they benefit us." Another chime sounded, louder this time. A voice filled the room, neutral and artificial, announcing that a council review had been initiated. Salieri looked toward the ceiling, then back at Elias. "It seems your refusal has already begun to change things." "Good," he said quietly. "That means it's working." He did not know what would happen next. He did not know how many powerful beings he had just angered. But for the first time since waking up, he felt fully awake. Whatever this place was, whatever test the galaxy had placed before him, Elias Mercer would not fail it by staying silent. And somewhere deep within the Concord station, the idea of what humanity truly was began to shift. The council chamber of Concord Station was vast and quiet, built to make visitors feel small without frightening them. Elias Mercer stood at its center on a circular platform of soft white light. He wore the same simple gray clothing, but his posture was steady, his feet planted as if he were standing on solid ground back on Earth. Around him, shapes shifted in the air. Holographic forms of the coalition representatives appeared one by one. Some were tall and thin, others wide and slow-moving, some barely shaped like anything human at all. They did not speak at first. They watched. Salieri stood a short distance behind Elias, no longer positioned as something offered, but not yet free either. Her hands were folded calmly, but her eyes followed every movement in the chamber. This moment mattered more than she had expected. The central voice of the council finally spoke, layered and neutral, translated smoothly into simple words. "Human soldier Elias Mercer, you have refused a formally granted reward. This action disrupts established protocol." Elias nodded once. "I understand." "Clarify your reasoning," the voice said. "You were not harmed. The companion delegate volunteered. No suffering was recorded." Elias took a breath. He had spoken in tense negotiations before, but this felt different. This was not about territory or resources. This was about meaning. "You think there was no harm because no one screamed," he said, "but harm isn't always loud." The chamber remained silent. "You called her a reward," he continued, gesturing slightly toward Salieri without turning his back on the council. "That turns a thinking person into an object. Even if she volunteered, even if she was willing, the idea itself is wrong." Several representatives shifted, colors changed, textures rippled. "One human's discomfort does not outweigh interspecies tradition," the council voice replied. "It's not discomfort," Elias said. "It's responsibility. Explain." "When humans gained the ability to cross stars," Elias said, "we carried our history with us. We've done terrible things in the past by deciding who mattered and who didn't. We learned the hard way that systems can be polite and still be cruel." Salieri felt her breath catch slightly. No one had ever spoken of history like that in a council chamber. Not as pride. Not as defense, as a warning. "You see generosity," Elias continued. "I see a test, and if humanity fails this test, we don't deserve the trust you're offering." A low murmur spread through the chamber, not as sound, but as vibration. Another voice spoke, sharper than the first. "Your species has accepted advantages before. Trade benefits, strategic protections. Why draw the line here?" Elias answered without hesitation. "Because things are not people." Silence followed, deep, heavy. Salieri realized then that the council was not angry, it was confused. truly confused. Their systems were built on exchange, balance, visible outcomes. What Elias was describing did not fit neatly into their logic. The central voice spoke again. If the companion delegate is released, what alternative do you propose? Elias turned slightly, finally looking at Selari, not as a symbol, not as a problem, as a person. She stays, he said, but not for me. Selari's eyes widened. She stays as herself, Elias continued. As an observer if she chooses, as a partner in dialogue. With full freedom to leave, disagree, or speak against us if she wants. That would reduce the value of the exchange, the council said. Elias gave a small, tired smile. Then maybe the exchange was never the point. A long pause followed. Time on Concord Station did not move the same way it did on Earth, but Elias felt the weight of it anyway. He knew he was asking powerful beings to change how they saw strength. Selari stepped forward before she fully realized she was moving. I request permission to speak, she said clearly. The council hesitated, then granted it. She turned to face them, her voice steady but alive with something new. I volunteered because I believed humans were dangerous due to their refusal to submit. I believed closeness would teach me how to survive them. She looked at Elias briefly, then back to the council. I did not expect to be refused. A ripple of attention moved through the chamber. In my culture, Selari continued, value is proven by usefulness. By how well one fits into a role assigned by the whole. But this human has introduced a concept I was not prepared for. She paused, searching for the right words. That worth exists even when no role is being filled. The council processed this slowly. If I am sent home now, she said, you will learn nothing. If I am kept as property, you will learn nothing. But if I stay as a free observer, you may learn why humans inspire both fear and loyalty. The chamber grew still again. At last, the central voice spoke. Your proposal will be accepted on a provisional basis. Elias felt a tension he had not noticed ease slightly in his chest. The companion delegate designation will be dissolved, the voice continued. Selari of the Lith Collective will remain as an independent cultural envoy. Selari exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. Elias bowed his head slightly, not in submission but in thanks. The council session ended without ceremony. The holographic forms faded, leaving the chamber quiet and bright. Later, Elias stood near a wide observation window, looking out at the slow movement of ships beyond the station. He felt older than he had that morning, but lighter too. Selari joined him, standing at his side rather than behind him. You altered a long-standing system, she said. They will not forget this. Neither will I, Elias replied. I didn't plan to make trouble. You did, she said gently, the most difficult kind. They stood in silence for a moment. Why did you volunteer? Elias asked. She considered the question. My people feared humans because you do not behave as expected. You advance without permission. You adapt too quickly. We believed understanding one human closely would give us control. And now? He asked. And now, she said, I believe control was never the danger. He glanced at her. Then what was? She met his eyes. Influence. Elias laughed softly. Yeah, that sounds like us. Over the following days, word spread through Concord Station, not loudly, not as scandal. As curiosity, other species began requesting brief meetings with Elias, not as a soldier but as a representative of a strange idea. They asked him why humans refused certain advantages, why they argued against systems that favored them, why they insisted on consent even when power made it unnecessary. Elias answered honestly, because we learned what happens when power goes unchallenged, and we decided we didn't want to become that again. Selari watched these conversations closely. She recorded them not as data points but as stories. She began sending messages home, careful and thoughtful. Humans, she wrote, were not defined by conquest or kindness alone. They were defined by resistance to roles that stripped meaning from choice. On the day Elias was cleared to return to human space, Selari walked with him to the departure gate. You could have left earlier, she said. No one would have stopped you. I wanted to make sure the door stayed open, he replied. For others like me? For everyone, he said. She inclined her head, a gesture of respect among her people. When my reports are read, there will be debate, possibly conflict. Elias nodded. That's okay. Real understanding always starts with friction. She hesitated, then asked, if our positions were reversed, would your people have done the same? Elias thought of Earth, of history, of mistakes and progress tangled together. Some would, he said. Some wouldn't, but we keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. That's the promise. Scifi considered this, then stepped back. Then I will tell them this, she said, that humanity's strength is not in what it takes, but in what it refuses to become. Elias smiled. As his ship departed Concord Station, Scifi watched from the window. She felt no sense of loss, only direction. Across the galaxy, systems quietly adjusted. Words were rewritten. Traditions were questioned, and whenever someone asked why, the answer traced back to a single human who woke up, was offered everything and said no. That refusal echoed farther than any weapon ever could. Months passed after Elias Mercer left Concord Station, but the effects of his refusal did not fade. They spread quietly, like a slow change in gravity that no one could ignore once they felt it. On the human side of the border, Elias was welcomed home without ceremony. There were no parades, no medals placed on his chest. His report went through layers of review, translated into careful language for diplomats and lawmakers. Many praised his actions in private. Some questioned them in public. Elias did not argue. He had not done what he did to be agreed with. He had done it because he could not do otherwise. He was offered a desk role, then a teaching post, then a quiet retirement. He refused those two, at least for now. Instead, he accepted a temporary assignment as a liaison, a bridge between human space and the growing number of species asking questions about human ethics. Far away, on Scifi's home world, those questions landed like sparks in dry air. The Lith Collective had always valued harmony. Roles were assigned early in life, and most accepted them without complaint. The system worked. It produced stability, efficiency, and peace. But after Scifi's reports were shared, something uncomfortable happened. People began to hesitate. They did not rebel. They did not shout. They simply asked small questions. Why was one role chosen for them? Why could it not change? Why did humans refuse advantage even when it was freely offered? Scifi stood before her own council, her posture calm but her thoughts sharp. She did not accuse her people of cruelty. She did not shame them. She only described what she had seen. The human did not free me, she said. I was never bound in chains. He challenged the idea that made chains unnecessary. The council listened, uneasy. Humans do not believe worth is proven by usefulness alone, she continued. They believe worth exists first and roles come after. That idea did not fit easily into Lith philosophy. But it stayed. Across other systems, similar conversations began. Trade councils revised language. Diplomatic gifts were redefined. Some traditions were defended fiercely. Others were quietly set aside. The galaxy did not change overnight. It never did, but it leaned. Elias felt that lean when he returned to Concord Station a second time, not as a patient or a subject, but as an invited voice. The station looked the same but felt different. Fewer guards, more open halls, more signs written in shared language instead of strict symbols. Scifi met him at the arrival gate, this time wearing no formal robes. Her clothing was simple, practical. Her expression was warm. You came back, she said. So did you, Elias replied. They walked together through the station, passing beings of many shapes and sizes. Some glanced at Elias with curiosity. Others nodded with quiet respect. He was not famous, but he was known. You've been busy, he said. So have you, Scifi answered. Your people approved the ethical framework proposal. Approved is a strong word, Elias said. They agreed to argue about it longer, she smiled slightly. That is also progress. They entered a smaller chamber this time, not the vast council hall. Around a simple table sat representatives from several species. No one stood above anyone else. No one was projected larger than life. The meeting was not dramatic. There were no raised voices. It was in some ways harder than conflict. They discussed consent, autonomy, the limits of cultural tradition when it met shared space. Elias spoke only when needed. He did not claim moral superiority. He spoke from experience. We are still learning, he said at one point. We fail often, but we have learned that systems that ignore choice eventually break, sometimes quietly, sometimes all at once. A representative from a long-established empire asked, do humans believe their values should replace ours? Elias shook his head. No, we believe values should be questioned when they cross borders, including our own. That answer lingered. After the meeting, Scifi and Elias stood again by an observation window. Ships moved slowly beyond the glass, each carrying lives, ideas, futures. Do you ever regret refusing? Scifi asked. Elias thought about it, about the easy path he could have taken. the comfort. The praise, no, he said, but I do get tired. That too, she said, seems very human. News traveled faster than ships. Stories of the human who said no were told differently depending on who spoke them. Some painted him as stubborn, others as dangerous, many as admirable. Elias did not correct them. One day, a young delegate from a newly contacted species approached him, nervous, curious. Our people are preparing a welcoming gift for humans, the delegate said. We do not wish to offend. What should we offer? Elias smiled. Conversation, he said, and the freedom to walk away from it. The delegate looked confused, then thoughtful. On Celari's world, role assignments became more flexible, not abolished, adjusted. Choice entered the system like a new variable. It caused inefficiency. It also caused creativity. Some elders resisted. Some young ones struggled with uncertainty. Celari helped where she could, not by pushing, but by listening. She often thought of Elias during those moments, of how calm he had been while standing alone before a council that could have crushed him with words alone. Strength, she had learned, was not always loud. Years later, Elias stood at the edge of a human colony world, watching children of mixed species play together under an artificial sky. No one thought it strange anymore. It was just life. Celari stood beside him, older now by human standards, though her species aged differently. Do you think this would have happened without you? She asked. Elias shook his head. It would have happened without me, just slower or differently. She considered that. You changed the direction, if not the destination. Maybe, he said, or maybe the destination was never fixed. A message arrived from Concord Station, informing them that the companion delegate designation had been formally removed from all coalition records. The term itself was being studied as a historical artifact, a reminder of an older way of thinking. Celari closed the message with quiet satisfaction. History will argue about you, she said to Elias. History always does, he replied. They watched the children run, laugh, argue, and make up again. No one owned anyone. No one was a reward. Somewhere in the vastness of space, new civilizations were rising. They would make their own mistakes. They would face their own tests. But woven into the growing network of stars was a simple idea, carried not by force but by example, that a person's value was not something to be granted. It already existed. And that, more than any fleet or weapon, was what made humanity impossible to ignore. Time moved forward in quiet ways after the galaxy learned to question itself. Elias Mercer grew older, though not in a way that felt heavy. His hair turned gray at the edges. His steps slowed just a little, but his eyes remained clear, always watching, always listening. He was no longer a soldier in uniform. He was something harder to define. He traveled less now. Others carried the work forward. Younger humans, non-humans too. People who had grown up hearing the story not as legend, but as background truth. That no one should be owned. That choice mattered. Still, when difficult meetings arose, when words failed and trust felt thin, Elias' name was sometimes spoken. Not as a command, as a request. On one such day, far from Earth, a message reached him and Celari on the colony world they now shared part-time. It came from the outer edge of coalition space, from a newly contacted civilization known as the Kellen Reach. They were old, older than most known species, quiet. Careful, their first contact had been polite, distant, and full of formality, but now something had stalled. They have paused all talks, Celari said, reading the message slowly. They fear contamination of their social order. Elias sat across from her, hands wrapped around a warm cup. That's not new. No, she agreed, but this time they asked a question before withdrawing. He looked up. What question? She met his eyes. They asked if humanity truly believes that refusing power can make one stronger. Elias smiled faintly. Sounds like an argument waiting to happen. They have invited you, Celari continued. Not as a representative, as an example. Elias sighed, but there was no real resistance in him. I was hoping my days of being an example were done. Examples do not retire, Celari said gently. The journey to the Kellen Reach took weeks. Elias spent most of it watching stars drift past, thinking about all the choices that had led him here. He did not feel important. He felt connected. When they arrived, the Kellen greeted them in a chamber carved directly into a massive stone structure floating in space. The walls were ancient, worn smooth by time. The air felt heavy, full of memory. The Kellen were tall and angular, their forms sharp like sculptures. Their voices were slow and layered, each word carefully chosen. "You are the human who refused," their lead speaker said. Elias nodded. "I am." "You gained influence through denial," the Kellen continued. "This concerns us." "Why?" Elias asked simply. "Because our civilization is built on acceptance of order," the speaker replied. "Roles, hierarchy, stability, refusal is seen as threat." Elias considered this. "Then you understand why you paused talks," he said. "You're afraid we'll change you." The chamber stirred slightly at that, not anger, recognition. "Yes," the Kellen admitted, "and yet your presence suggests you do not seek dominance." "I don't," Elias said, "and neither does humanity as a whole. We seek connection that doesn't cost someone their self." Silence followed, long, deep. One of the younger Kellens stepped forward. "If refusal is strength," they asked, "why do humans still accept leadership, law, and structure?" Elias smiled. "Because refusing everything isn't freedom, choosing what you accept is." That answer stayed with them. The talks resumed slowly after that. Not because Elias convinced them in one moment, but because he stayed. He listened. He did not rush them. He allowed silence to do some of the work. When the delegation finally parted, the Kellen offered no grand treaty, only a promise to keep talking. "That is enough," Scifi said as they departed. "Yes," Elias agreed, "it always is." Back on the colony world, life continued. Children grew, new buildings rose, cultures mixed in ways that no longer felt strange. One evening, Elias sat alone near the edge of the settlement, watching the artificial sunset fade into night. Scifi joined him, as she often did. "You are quieter lately," she observed. "I'm thinking about endings," Elias said. She did not interrupt. "I won't be around forever," he continued. "And stories change when the people in them leave." Scifi nodded. "That is true of all stories. I just want to make sure this one doesn't turn into something it was never meant to be," he said. "Something rigid?" she asked. "Something worshipped," he replied. She understood then. "You fear becoming a symbol instead of a lesson." "Exactly." Scifi looked out at the stars. "Then perhaps it is time to let the story fracture." He raised an eyebrow. "Fracture." "Stories that remain whole become monuments," she said. "Stories that break into many versions stay alive." Elias chuckled softly. "You've been spending too much time with humans." "Possibly," she admitted. In the years that followed, Elias withdrew further from public life. Not suddenly, gently, he mentored instead of spoke, asked questions instead of answering them. When people asked for his opinion, he often replied, "What do you think?" Some found that frustrating, others found it freeing. Scifi took on more formal roles again, not as a delegate defined by others, but as one who defined herself. She helped draft interspecies charters that used careful language, language that left space for choice and change. The term reward faded from diplomatic use. Not banned, simply unused. It began to sound old, uncomfortable, like a word from a past that no longer fit. One day, a young human approached Elias with bright eyes and restless energy. "Do you think humanity will always choose the right thing?" they asked. Elias smiled sadly. "No, then why does any of this matter?" the young human pressed. "Because choosing the right thing once makes it easier to choose it again," Elias said, "and choosing it together makes it harder to forget." The young human seemed to think about that for a long time. Near the end of his life, Elias returned to Concord Station one last time. The place where he had first woken up confused and angry offered everything and said no. The station had changed. Art filled its halls now. Open forums replaced sealed chambers. The observation windows were larger. Scifi walked beside him, matching his slower pace. "Do you regret waking up that day?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "No, but I'm glad I didn't know how far it would go." "Why?" "I might have been scared," he said. She smiled. "Fear does not suit you." "It does," he replied. "I just learned not to let it decide." They stood together where it had all begun, no audience, no council, just two people sharing a moment. "You were never my reward," Elias said quietly. "I know," Scifi replied. "I was my own beginning." He laughed softly, then rested. When Elias Mercer passed, there was no galaxy-wide announcement, no statues raised, no day named after him. Instead, conversations paused, meetings slowed, people remembered. They remembered a human who refused when it would have been easy to accept. They remembered that power did not have to be loud. They remembered that dignity did not need permission. And in that remembering, the galaxy continued to change, not because it was forced to, but because it had.